Okay. So the rationale of doing counterbalancing is that we are not saying you doing counterbalancing, that's you arranging it into several orders. There will be no carryover effect. But the carryover effect here in one condition will be what will be nullified by the other order. So it means that the carryover effect that we find here will be cancelled by the carryover effect here and the carryover effect in this side. So it means they will cancel each other. And when it is cancelled, it is cancelled in that regard, then it means that that carryover effect this time around wouldn't have any effect, significant effect on the experiment. That's the rationale. So although there will be carryover effect, but since we've arranged it into several orders, whatever carryover effect we find in the various experiments or orders that we've made, it will cancel each other, thereby reducing the impact of the carryover effects. So that's the rationale behind counterbalancing. Okay. So please, any question when it comes to within group design? Any question?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Evelyn, please go ahead.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, please. Let's assume that I do within tests on using alcohol.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and then I give one level this morning to a participant, and then the next morning, or am I supposed to wait for another day, or I should continue with the same alcohol on the same person the same day to have to experience carryover?
It all boils down to the experimenter, what you are doing. But in doing it, one thing we normally say that even within group, experimental factors could be one of the disadvantages. Why? Because if, for instance, you conduct the study in the morning and conduct it in the afternoon, especially if it is a learning task. Researchers point out that people learn a lot, people learn better in the morning as compared to in the afternoon. So it means that the afternoon session or experiment that you are doing could also affect their performance. That's one thing.
Okay, so how can I use?
What can you use to?
I said, how can I use counterbalancing to avoid carryover effect in this alcohol case?
In this alcohol case, in terms of your environment, right?
Yes.
Then it means that you need to make sure that the experiment is done the following day. Then it should be in the morning.
Okay.
If you realize that environmental factors could play a role, whereby maybe you conducting it in the afternoon could affect their performance, then you can wait till the morning and and do it.
Okay.
The following morning and do it. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Susanna, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So when we do the difference between the between and the within,
please come again.
My line went off, so I was lost. When we are doing the difference between the between and then within group or something, my line went off, so I couldn't hear you. I didn't understand that, please.
All right. Kwesi. Kwesi, please go ahead. Kindly unmute your mic and speak. All right, Samuel, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Please, I want to ask if there is any similarities between group design and within group design.
When you said there's no similarity, I told you it is the opposites of it. So if you realize whatever thing that we did with between, it is the entire opposite of what? Of within group.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So one thing is, if you're having issues, I'm recording. So time also plays a role. So there's no way I can go back and forth and explain everything entirely. So if you miss one or two things,
how are we going to get the recording?
Yes, I'll upload it on the YouTube link and give you feedback. So I'll forward the, when I'm done recording, I'll alert your course rep so that you can go there and have access to it. Or if you've subscribed, you would also be alerted. Yep. So you give me by the close up, by next week, whatever thing that I've done, I've recorded, it will be uploaded for you to have access to it. All right. So that will be all when it comes to between and within group. And that will be the end of session 4. Okay, so the next thing that we'll be doing is experimental designs. So on experimental designs, we have one known as simple experimental design. So the first one under simple experimental design is single factor design or one group design. So one thing about one group design is that we just have only one group. You remember I said, that was last 2 weeks, I said, in any true experiment, there should be a treatment group and a control group. And currently, all of you know what treatment group and control group is all about. But with single factor design, we have only treatment group. We have only one treatment group, and that's it. They don't include any control group. So for instance, I'm testing the effect of music on recall. Then if I want to use single factor design, I'll just use one treatment group whereby the participant will be exposed to music. That's all. Then I'll test their recall. That's it. So it means I wouldn't have any control group whereby there will be what? A no music condition. So when that happens, then it means I'm doing a typical single factor design, one group design. But one unfortunate thing about single factor design is that it all has to do with, it threatens the internal validity of our findings. Meaning that it wouldn't make us know whether truly the independent variable is what is truly what affecting the dependent variable, or other factors are the ones doing that. Because we didn't include a control group, that's no music condition, we wouldn't know for sure whether it is music that is causing people not to recall a lot, or it is something different entirely. So when that happens, then we normally say, so in most situations, we tell experimenters to avoid a single factor design always, because it threatens the findings that we've gotten. All right. So please, any question when it comes to single factor design? All right. So this is also a more, okay, Inshra. Inshra, please unmute your mic and speak. Inshra,
okay. Sir, please, I'm sorry. It was a mistake.
Okay, Inshra Beidou. Inshra Beidou, please unmute your mic and speak.
Hello?
Kindly go ahead.
Please, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I want to know that if the single experiment design, is it also done in the lab?
Yes, you can. When we say lab, it's not like, okay, like any scientific lab or whatsoever. Any experiment that you are doing, which is not in its natural setting, is referred to as a lab. So when you say an experiment is done in a lab, it doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, we have laboratory equipment like a thermometer and so on and so forth that we'll be using, flags, what have you, that we'll be using to conduct the experiment. No. Any experiment which is not done in its natural setting is referred to as a lab experiment. So yes, some of these things could be done in a laboratory form. But the rationale is that so long as we don't bring out other groups, but we focus on only one group and test them, it is referred to as a single factor design. And on a single factor, we have several of them. So the first one is the one group post-test only design. So with the one group, you have only one condition or one treatment group, then you test them. So like the music experiment that I did. Benis.
Sir, please, what's the difference between the within group and the single?
Would you repeat what you said?
Group? I said, what's the difference between the within group and the single experiment?
With a within group, if you really realize, we have two conditions. The scenario that I gave, we have two conditions, music and no music. But what happens is that all the participants went through whatever conditions that was in play. So if, for instance, we've divided the conditions into 5, or we've divided it into 3, like, okay, lyrical music, relaxing music, no music. All the participants will go through the 3 conditions. That's within group. But with single factor or one group post-test only design, we have only one condition. That's we will test them on maybe only lyrical music. We wouldn't have other groups or other conditions in play. So all the participants will be tested on only lyrical music. That's it. Then afterwards, we test them. So when that happens, then it means we call it a one group post-test only, because we have only one group. And all the participants went through that condition. So I hope it is clear now.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Then the next single factor design is what is referred to as post-test only with non-equivalent control group. So with this, we're trying as much as possible to get a non-equivalent control group. We try to get a non-equivalent control group in that regard. So for instance, I've realized that I want to test the effect of music on recall. I selected University of Ghana students. I selected University of Ghana students for that, to that effect. Then I'll try as much as possible to go outside and select some groups of individuals again. Like maybe I'll select people who are maybe street children, and also test and also compare them. So you could see that although I have one group, which is University of Ghana students, I've gone outside to select other group of individuals, that's street children. And you could see that University of Ghana students and street children, they are not what? They are not quite similar because their characteristics are quite different from each other in that regard. Why am I saying they are not similar? Because of the fact that the educational background of UG students will be quite higher than individuals or individuals within the street. Hence, there's no equivalence within my control group. Okay, so it means that the street children that I selected, they will be the control group, all right. It means they wouldn't receive any music. No lyrical music will be played to them. But one thing is, they are not equivalent, or they are not the same as or similar to UG students because of their educational background in there. So please, any question when it comes to post-test only non-equivalent control group? Any question? Okay. Okay, Sisi Frimpong. Hello, Sisi. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, sir, please, my question is on one group Pretest test only. No. That's why my phone went off, so I didn't get it.
Basically, I said with the one group post-test only, you have one group, okay? So like, I want to use the same experiment, music. I want to find out the effect of music on recall. This time around, I'll select, or all my participants will be under one group. Maybe I'll play only lyrical music to them. Then afterwards, I'll test them. But with post-test only with non-equivalent group, I realized that, okay, me using only one group, there will be some limitations. It will reduce the internal validity of my results. Hence, I'll try and get a control group. But the control group that I'm trying to select, I didn't select from my sample, that's University of Ghana student. I didn't select from University of Ghana student. I went outside to select some group of individuals, maybe people along the street with low educational background. Then I'll compare them with UG students. So it means the UG student that I selected, they will be exposed to the music. But those I selected from the street, they wouldn't be exposed to any music. Then I'll compare them and see which one is better, which one did well. So it means that the two groups, they are not the same, they are not similar. So we call it non-equivalent because the control group that I'm using, they are non-equivalent to my treatment group. So that's what post-test only with non-equivalent group is all about.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. So it means with the post-test only with non-equivalent control group, you don't have an ideal control group because you didn't select the participant from the control group from the sample itself, but you went outside to select them, which to a large extent also reduces generalizability of your findings. But one way or the other, it strengthens the internal validity of your results as compared to the previous one that we did, the one group post-test only, whereby you don't have any control group. Okay. Then another one is one group pre-test, post-test only. One group pre-test, post-test only. So let me use the same experiment. Want to find out the effect of music on recall. So what I do is that I'll select maybe 20 participants from University of Ghana students. From University of Ghana, then expose them to music. Then afterwards, I'll test them in the morning. So in the morning, I will expose them to music, test them, and see if they can easily recall some words that I'll display to them. Then in the afternoon or the following day, or maybe some days later, I'll call them back, play the same music to them. I'll play the same music to the same group and test them. So it means that I have only one group, that's music. And I've tested them before and what? And after in that regard. When that happens, then we call it one group pretest PostTest. So a typical example is, let me use another scenario. Sorry, I think the other scenario that I did was not convincing enough. One thing is with pretest PostTest, let's say we want to do an intervention plan. Yeah, that's the main thing. So the first experiment that I gave wouldn't work better. We want to conduct an intervention to find out or to increase people's self-esteem levels. So when it comes to University of Ghana, we realize that their self-esteem is quite low. So first, before we do any intervention for self-esteem, the researcher will first test the people, their self-esteem level. So that's the pretest. Before the intervention is done, the researcher will test all the participants, their self-esteem level. Then afterwards, an intervention will be done for the participants. That's an intervention for self-esteem. We'll teach them how to boost their self-esteem. Then, after the intervention is done, they will then be tested again. The same participants that went through the self-esteem program, they'll be tested to find out whether their self-esteem has reduced or increased. That's the post-test. So it means we have only one group. And we did the intervention for all the groups, all the participants in the group. So when that happens, we call it one group post-test, pretest post-test. But a researcher could decide that, okay, the University of Ghana students that I've selected, I'll divide them into two groups. Some of them will go through the intervention. Some of the participants in the other group wouldn't go through the interventions. So it means the researcher has been able to bring out a control group in that regard. When it happens like that, then it wouldn't be a one group pretest PostTest. It means we have two groups. So I hope you get a scenario. When it comes to one group pretest PostTest, all the participants go through the before and the after test that we want. We don't divide them into groups. Okay. So any question or clarification when it comes to the one group pretest PostTest? Okay. Elvis.
Yeah, sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, please, if I get you the one group pretest PostTest,
okay.
What you are trying to say, all the participants will go through the same treatment.
Yeah.
Without assign them to any group.
Without assigning them to, can you
Okay.
repeat what you said?
Thank you.
Your line was breaking, so Elvis, I couldn't get the full details of what you were saying.
You were saying that within for the one group protest, the participants were assigned to only one treatment, no other control group. If I get you.
All the single factor design that I emphasize on, we don't have a control group in there. Whether it is post-test only design or post-test only with non-equivalent group, then one group pretest post-test. But what makes this one unique from the other single factor design is that we have a pretest in there. That's a before study. So that's what I was really going on, that with pretest post-test, which is one group, although we have only one treatment, no control group, the participants in the treatment group will go through a pretest. That's a before test. So before any intervention will be institutionalized, they will first be tested. That's the before. Then after we've done the intervention program, we will test them again. That's the post-test. So that's where the name, the pretest, post-test come from. Okay, Kwesi.
Hello. So
yes, please go
I
ahead.
just wanted to give an example to see if it falls under the one group post-test, pre-test. Let's assume we have people with high blood pressure.
Okay.
And you're supposed to check their BP. And let's say there's a medicine that helps reduce their pressure.
Good.
So let's say before we do the test, we check all of them, their blood pressure. Then we give them the medicine. Then after we check their pressure again. Is that the one group post-test? Since it's a whole group
example
we are using for that whole process without dividing them?
Yes, perfect example. So
one group post-test, pre-test.
Yes, it has pre-test because before the medicine was given to them, they were first tested, their pressure level. Then after the medicine was given, they were again tested. So that's a typical pre-test, post-test. One group.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning. This is Samuel. Yeah. So in the case of pre-test, do you normally take into consideration some normally say that at the time that you may be conducting the research, like we're talking about blood pressure, there may be some hormonal imbalance or there will be a challenge that will give a wrong prescription. If you are going to conduct that research again, will you consider that particular factor before, or since the first test has been done, you stand on that and then do the research?
Whatever research that you are doing, you are supposed to factor in a lot of things, but it's not everything that you can easily eliminate or reduce. You are supposed to consider environmental factors, even the nutrition of the people that you are conducting the research on and all that. So everything you are supposed to factor into it, but it's not everything that you can easily control or remove. That's one thing. So that could be certain disadvantages depending on the things that you were able to eliminate and the unforeseen ones that you couldn't eliminate. So every experiment that you are doing, you wouldn't get an ideal experiment whereby there will be no limitations, because it's not everything that you can easily eliminate, especially extraneous variables. Okay. So in most situations, you could see that when it comes to the one group factor design, it is not a true experiment, because I told you last week, I told you when it comes to any true experiment, there should be a treatment group and a control group. But we realized when it comes to the single factor designs that we were talking about, none of the types had a true control group, or some of them didn't have even a control group in that regard. So at the moment, we are moving on to a true experimental design. And as I've been saying, with any true experimental design, there should be at least 2 groups, whereby one of the group is a control group, then the other group is the treatment group or the experimental group. So like the typical example that I use, whereby we are talking about the effect of music on recall. We had a control group whereby we call it lyrical music. That's the experimental group or the treatment group, lyrical music. Then we had a control group whereby they were not exposed to any, the participants were not exposed to any music. That's no music group. So that's a typical true experimental design. But in some true experimental designs, we can have several groups, but always we should find treatment groups and control group in it. So it means some true experimental design that has more than 2 groups, it means the rationale is that they've divided an experimental group or treatment group into several groups. So for instance, the same music that I'm measuring, I can have lyrical music, relaxing music, and no music. So it means that the treatment group or the experimental group has again been divided into 2. That's lyrical and relaxing. Then we have our control group, which is no music. Susanna, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. So the last one, you tell us the validity and the generalization. I don't know.
I don't get what you're saying.
The valid.
Susanna, I don't get what you're saying.
The last group that the last group that you just discussed, the post-test group design. Since there will not be control group, it has the validity and then the generalization. Is it solid or high?
I told you, Susanna, that all the single factor design, you know, the previous ones that you've done, whether it is one group pretest only, or one group with non-equivalent, or it is one group pretest post-test, they are all under single factor design. And I said when it comes to single factor design, it limits internal validity. So all of them limit internal validity. That's one thing, because of the fact that first it could lead to. So I want you yourself to search for them. What we mean by some of the things under internal validity. First, there could be what? Maturation. There could be contrast effects. And even with the pretest, post-test that we said, there's a high possibility that it could lead to carryover effect. So you yourself, you can search for what we mean by threat to internal validity. We have several of them that you can think about. All right. So the next one is the true experiment. So I think within your slides, an example was given. So let's go through and see. A psychologist assesses the effectiveness of problem-based instruction in research methods class. The researcher intends to compare 2 groups. That's those who have been exposed to teaching approach. So that will be the experimental group or the treatment group. Then those who have not, that's the control group. And what are they measuring? Performance on research methods. So at the moment, let's use this scenario whereby I'm teaching right now. I'm teaching research methods. Then I want to test the effectiveness of what we did today among the entire students. At the moment, you are 49 in all listening. And I know that research methods, you're more than 49. You're about level 300 students, you're about 200, more than 200 students. Then I'll then say, okay, at the end of today's discussion, I'll be conducting a test. So there's a high tendency that I can easily divide you into two. The 48 students that I have here at the moment, they will be what? The experimental group, because you have been exposed to the teaching approach. You've been exposed to this content. Then the rest, they will fall under the control group because they haven't been exposed to any teaching approach. Then we'll test their performance based on the questions that I'll set. So that's a typical true experiment because we have our control group and our experimental group. Okay. So the first one that we're doing is PostTest only design. So don't be confused about the one group that we did. The one group PostTest only, it means that we had only one group, which is the treatment group. But with a true experiment, whereby we have PostTest only, it should tell you that it means we have two groups. So first, I have my experimental group. Then I have my control group. Then I'll test them on the independent variable. So let's say my independent variable is music. I want to test the effect of music on recall, right? Then I would divide my experiment into two. Music, which is lyrical music, and no music. So the lyrical music will be my experimental group. Then the no music will be my control group. Then I'll test them on the treatment. So it means those in the lyrical music, they'll be what? They'll be tested on music. It means music will be played to them. Then those in the no music group, no music will be played to them. Then afterwards, I'll test them on the DV. I'll measure the DV by making them recall certain words that were displayed to them when the music was played or not played. I'm trying to see if you can hold on for the meantime. I'll try and get an experiment that I did with some group of students in an international school. That's the international school. I conducted an experiment for them, and we did it together, and they are supposed to do a write-up on it. I'm trying to see if I can get that experiment and walk you through so that you would grasp it much better. So let's yes. So this is a typical experiment that I did with them. So let's say I have the no music group. So it means I've divided my participants into two groups. And the first group is the no music. I'll then display these words to them. So right after these words these syllables are displayed, I'll then task them to recall